Today, I'm delighted to welcome Nisanka. Nisanka, thank you so much for joining me on Story Live.
Thank you for having me, Rachel.
And I love what you've got behind you. Are they images on your wall, or is that a virtual background?
No, it's not virtual. It's a really nice picture. Just got
Yeah,
it from Amazon.
lovely,
Yeah,
lovely, really nice.
thank you.
Nisanka, we haven't actually, other than a brief chat ahead of this session, we haven't actually met, have we?
No, we haven't because I think we virtually met when the lockdown kicked in, so we haven't personally met, but
No.
just a virtual brief meeting.
Yes, but we didn't know of each other even, did we? Because to date, all of the other guests that I've had on I have approached them, but because you're a connection with Lisa Moore, who was one of my other interviewees on Story,
Yeah,
you approached me, and I love that. I always think, one of my philosophies is, well, what's the worst that's going to happen if you ask something and
absolutely.
if somebody says no? So I'm just putting that out there for any of the listeners who are thinking they might like to come on this as well.
Yeah.
So thank you to you for reaching out and
Oh,
asking if you could come and share some of your stories. So
thank you. I mean, if you wanna do something, you have to make it happen.
absolutely great philosophy, and I'm sure we're going to hear a bit more about that as you talk through your story.
Yeah.
So Nisanka, what I invite my people to do on this is to tell us about what you do, who you do
Mhm.
it for, and how you came to be doing it, because I am always fascinated by people's backstories, what brings them to be doing what they're doing, what was their inspiration.
Okay, I can tell you in brief. So, I'm an ICF accredited coach, and I'm also a complementary therapist and a trainee NLP practitioner. And what I do is I help people reduce anxiety to feel calm, confident, and resilient by getting to the root cause of it and sort of releasing any releasing past traumas and just making people work through their experiences to turn some of their fears into positive action. So that's what I do. I work with all the age groups. There's no discrimination to how you feel when it comes to anxiety. So I'm very much of an inclusive practice. So work with all age groups, all genders. Yeah, that's what I do. How I got into it, it's actually through my own journey of recovering from um, generalized anxiety disorder and severe depression. So I This is all related to childhood trauma. Obviously, I was born and raised in Sri Lanka during a very violent period because of war and riots and etc. etc. And some family background there as well that caused all of that childhood trauma. And obviously, life moved on. I did very well academically. Just went on, came to UK. It's almost like as if nothing's happened in the past. You kind of carry on, but there is this label that I am this person, I'm that person, I'm a snappy person, I don't know how to be, etc., etc. And anyway, so I had my daughter back in 2012, and it just took off from there. Because the thing is, there's only so much you can do in terms of pretending. Your body catches up, your subconscious catches up, and it just went out of proportion. 2017, I was really, really unwell with depression and anxiety, and that was the best gift I've ever had, apart from my child. Depression was my gift because it literally universe kicking me on my butt, say, "What are you doing? There's a better life out there. Find it," and I found it.
I love that. I love that when people can see it, their adversity as a gift. I think it was Katie Piper whose story is that she had acid thrown in her face. I might have got those stories muddled, but I think I'm right in saying that. And that's her thing as well. That actually it's the best thing that ever happened to her because it opened up so many doors for her. It's about the choice that you make at that point, isn't it?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely, absolutely. You can, life presents you with opportunities. I mean, I've been through quite a journey. So from where I'm standing, I can say all of these philosophies for anybody who is actually struggling right now might not see this, but believe me, there is that opportunity within you, within what's going on, within the adversity. You just need to take tiny little baby steps at a time. Keep
Mm.
going. Just keep going. because you
Yeah.
can get there.
Yeah, I think that's a lovely message. I think it's interesting, isn't it, what you said, because a lot of your initial trauma came as a child. And as a child, it's hard to make sense of all of that, isn't it? And but it's gonna find its way out. I mean, you said that you carried on as normal.
Yeah.
Because in a sense, as a child, you almost don't know that it's a trauma, I think. You know,
No.
not necessarily speaking from personal experience, because I didn't
Yeah.
have a major trauma as a child, but obviously I've studied it I have a background as a counsellor and so
Yeah.
and you can't keep hiding it forever. And it's often something, as with you, the birth of your own child that triggers it and brings it out, and then you have to deal with it.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. The thing is, once something's happened, and then that's that memory or the belief or whatever is in your subconscious, your conscious mind, you might just carry on, but subconsciously that's being played like a stuck record. It just keeps playing and playing and then playing, just literally just attracting similar incidents into my life. I mean, looking back, that's exactly what I have done. I've literally attracted similar incidents, similar people into my life, and you just kind of it just becomes that spaghetti junction kind of thing. So but then when you actually start resolving everything one by one, we get to the subconscious, work with your subconscious and find a resolution. Like you said, children don't make sense of it, so they end up believing it's their fault, and they're it, you know the world is a scary place, all of these negative beliefs they have about themselves. And it's just about resourcing that child to actually resolve it in your subconscious, and then just gradually move on, and everything actually just changes. Up until I went through this journey myself, Rachel, I never believed in this all universe stuff and the vibration stuff, and I didn't believe any of that. I was probably one of the most cynics. I was like, made no sense, make no logic. But I've been through the journey myself, and it just makes perfect sense, scientific sense as well. You
Brilliant.
have to get your vibrational frequencies right. You have to get your beliefs right. You have to get your thoughts positively right, and you end up attracting positive things into your life. And it's just a very simple thing.
Yes.
Hard until you do it, until you learn how to do it. It's hard, but when you learn how to do it, it just becomes autopilot.
Yes. And it's interesting, isn't it? Because whatever happens to you as a child,
Hmm.
only evaluate it with your learning of the world so far, can't you? I mean, on a completely different stream. I mean, one of the, my sort of ordinary everyday stories that I talk about is when I was about, I don't know how old, maybe 4 years old, when my parents used to go out in the evening. All I could think of in my 4-year-old mind, because I had no concept of what there was that they
Yeah.
possibly be doing, was that they must have been out burgling.
Yeah.
Because which was a really stupid thing to think, but that's all I had was my storybooks of people going out in the dark, and it
Yeah.
was a burglar with a bag of swag on his back, and I couldn't make sense of it. And obviously now I can see how ridiculous that was. But honestly, I used to be really, really worried that they wouldn't come home again, that they'd be caught by the police for this burgling. And and then my older brother and sister found out that that's what I used to think, and they thought that was so stupid because they were that bit older and they had
Yeah.
more sense to make of it. And when it is a trauma, obviously that's a far worse
Yeah.
situation, but it's only then when you go back and visit it through
Yeah.
now adult eyes, as long as you say, and you say you didn't used to think anything of all this stuff, as it were, a bit of woo,
Yeah.
I refer to it, is it often you're closed to that because
Yeah.
that's also set down in your belief systems, isn't it?
Yeah. It is.
Yeah, yeah.
It is.
I think
It's just
now, I
it.
mean, we're recording this in February 2021, so we're in the heart of lockdown with no idea when it's going to finish. And I'm very aware that a lot of people are in a really quite stressed place now. I know that, I'm struggling more than I did last time, and I know I'm not alone in that. And I've got people in my circle who absolutely cannot see and are unwilling to see the power of positive thought, gratitude, looking at what is good in your life, and all
Yeah.
those techniques that help us get through this period of time. And you know, there are none so deaf as those that will not hear, are there?
Rachel, I think there is a reason. I mean, I'm sorry that you're going through that as well. To be honest, though, there are moments that I find it difficult. The third lockdown hit me hard as well. I mean, I'm quite literate with managing anxiety and doing it all. I'm looking after myself really well. It hit me hard as well, but I have ways of bouncing back because I actually reach out for help. I still work with a therapist. It's just because our lives is like a bit of an onion. You just keep peeling one layer off, there's another one, you peel one layer off, there's another one. And I have, as a person, decided to keep working and never to stop working on myself. And coming back to the point where you said about people struggling and people don't see the value of all these positive thoughts, there's a reason. Because the mind, according to neuroscience, when you get stuck in that box, and it goes on and on and on and on in the same box, and people find it very difficult to see the other side of the box, as we say. There's this saying, grass is greener on the other side, but you have to water the grass to make it greener. So you have to get out of that mindset and find the greener grass and keep watering the grass at the other end. And there's another reason why people find it difficult to get out of that mindset. It's also because whatever we are going through right now is simply a trigger. We all think we are anxious because of the lockdown. I think what I want people to know, that we are triggered by the lockdown. There's something in the past that's happened when you were a child that's playing in the background. And I worked with several clients recently regarding the anxiety related to lockdown. I did some subconscious work, and we ended up in the childhood, when they were 2, when they were 3, when they were 5. Something happened in the childhood, and I want people to know this is a trigger. As much as we are cut off from community, we're cut off from human connection, and that's really difficult because we're packed animals. We need the hug, we need the touch, we need to go out. Of course, we have to consider that. But at the same time, if you're excessively triggered by the circumstances, it's a trigger. You're not anxious because of lockdown, you're triggered. Your anxiety is triggered because of the lockdown. So we just need to get to the bottom of it. And there are gentle and safe ways to reduce it and resolve things. And it's about, like I said, finding that way, and just find that patch of grass, start watering it.
I love that. Are there a couple of tips that general tips that could help anybody? I mean, obviously, when you're working one-to-one, you'll be looking for that person's specific triggers, which, as you say, might have been when they were 5, they were 10. But are there some general things that you advise people to do that perhaps people that aren't seriously enough, I mean, stressed and whatever by the situation, to go to invest in help, deep help, but just things to help them feel a little bit more upbeat, perhaps?
Of course, yeah, of course. So the really important thing is to pay attention to yourself and what's happening within you, because you'll notice whenever you feel anxious. So for example, you're watching news and a politician come on the screen and they're talking about something, you can suddenly feel this either rage or frustration or the sadness or the fear, whatever it is that you're feeling, you're feeling it. So when that happens, try and ground yourself. So connect with your 5 senses. So it's about, grounding is all about connecting and bringing it back to your body. So I'd say stay away from news that triggers you. I don't watch news, I don't read news. I seek out if I need anything. That's all I do. So when that happens, ground yourselves. And I'll give you a little technique to ground yourself. That is about, seek out 5 things that you can see. So it's about getting all your senses involved. 5 things you can see. Seek out. So it's not your general things. It's about like a cloud changing. It's a bird tweeting, a tree rustling, something like that. You just have to seek out 5 things you can see, 4 things you can hear, 3 things you can feel, um, and 2 things you can smell, and 1 thing you can taste. So by the time you do that, you ground yourself, you bring those thoughts back into your body, you connect with your senses, okay? And then it stops spiraling this thought into something, or it'll stop you catastrophizing things in your head, which will then start flooding the cortisol levels and will get your heartbeat going. But when you ground yourself, you break that. You break that. You calm yourself down, move on.
Yes. Lovely, thank you. Well, I hope that's a useful tip for some of our listeners. Yeah, I guess it's also a little bit, when people are about, get very nervous about speaking during their story and just standing up and giving a talk. I usually say to them, just when it's, your turn is coming,
Yeah,
just focus on your breath. So
absolutely.
sort of taking those thoughts inwards, because much as we like to think we can multitask, we can't multi-think, can we? We can only hold one thought at a
Yeah,
time. So while
absolutely.
thinking about our breathing, we're not worrying about getting on that stage and delivering our talk and dropping our notes and all that stuff that
Yeah.
people. That's really helpful. Thank you. Nisanka, I know there was another story you wanted to share today. So, and I know it's going to be quite, because you're from Sri Lanka, it's something that happened. So just to clarify, you were born in Sri Lanka and
I was
came.
born and raised in Sri Lanka, actually. I only came here back in 2008. So that's
Okay.
like 13 years ago.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So, what brought you here
I
initially?
did my master's. Yes, I came to do my master's, but I'm a that is part of the story, I'll tell you. But I'm a big literature fan, so I'm a big Wordsworth. I'm a big Shakespeare fan. That's all I could think of when I was doing my degree. It's like, when am I going to go to England? When am I going to go
Right.
to England?
Okay, okay. And your English is very fluent. So did you grow up speaking English? I mean,
Well, that's actually part of my story, I'll tell you.
right, over to you. Let's hear your story.
Oh, thank you. It's actually, your question brings me a really good place to talk about my English and my story. So, as you said, I was born and raised in Sri Lanka, in a very poor background, in a very small, very rustic village, far, far away from the Colombo, the town that, the busy metropolitan hub, away from all of that. None of my parents, nor my grandparents spoke English. None of my family, other members spoke English. Very few people spoke English in my small little town that I grew up. And so I often kind of, English wasn't a priority anyway, although we had to learn English as a second language in the school. It's a compulsory subject, but I always came last in English. Didn't know my ABCD, Rachel, believe it or not. Anyway, so we moved from that town to a bit of a bigger town where there were a little bit more influence in terms of, there were people who spoke English, English had a place, and that sort of things. And I was one of those students who always got sent out of the class because I didn't know my ABCD.
Oh,
There's this story. So one day I got sent out, and I I'm a good learner. I'm a quick learner. So I picked up things. I came back into the room. I wish I had stayed outside because there was a dictation class going on, and I had to do my dictation, and I couldn't. And I couldn't. I basically copied from my child next to me, and I got 2 words right out of 20. But anyway, I was like, oh my god, so feeling so embarrassed. So it just moved on. And I think when I was about in grade 7, we had a new English teacher. She was so pretty, she was so young, and she was also like Miss Sri Lanka runner-up. So very fluently speaking English. There was something about her, but I formed a really good attachment with her, which really changed everything, the perception towards me, perception towards English. So she took me on under her wings, and somehow my mum is a teacher, so she was my mum's student, math student. So that connection somehow got me special places, special attention. By the way, anyway, so and then I saw her talking to her parents in English. I saw her giving interviews in English, and it's just a real inspiration there. So I kind of started learning and I started picking up English language. And then a few years down the line, my aunt got married to an Englishman. Okay, so that was the only thing I could do was to speak to him in English. I had to get muster of my courage, so that helped. And then I gradually started learning English literature, and I fell in love with English literature. I love Shakespeare, I love Wordsworth, and I love Jane Austen. Even today, Pride and Prejudice is one of my favorite movies. Mr. Darcy, looking for a Mr. Darcy. uh, you know so it just gradually the passion grew, the knowledge grew. But and then obviously I entered teacher training college when I was about 20, even 21 I think. Even then I couldn't properly speak English. I could understand, I could read, I could write, but couldn't properly sort of speak. I could sort of muster up my courage to speak a couple of sentences. And it's just about practice, 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 practice. I had this mission. I'm going to go to England one day. I am going to see Lake District, which I did. I'm going to see Shakespeare's places, which I did, by the way. So I just kept going, and it became a goal. It became almost a healthy obsession. Healthy obsession. I picked up this habit of speaking to myself, speaking in front of a mirror. Um, and even now I do that. I haven't got rid of that habit. My daughter finds me sometimes. She goes, Mama, what are you talking about? But anyway, just kept practicing, 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 writing, writing, writing. And then obviously 2008 I came to England, which obviously gave me a good springboard to practice speaking very well. I did my master's in linguistics. Obviously that helped me as well. I did all of my tertiary education in English. That helped me because that was my choice, and I wanted to get this English right. um, yeah, and I mean, there are so many embarrassing stories about when I first came in and I didn't understand pronunciation, where I go, pardon, 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 and people just give up talking to me because they're like, just can't do this anymore. And then I had a very thick accent as well when I first came in. And, but the thing is, though, it's just about having a goal. It doesn't matter how fast you get there or how soon or how late you get there. As long as you want to get to that goal, you just go for it. So I just went for it. And I think some of my friends who knew me from 20 years ago texted me. They actually I do lives and stuff, and they can hear me. Some of them sort of inboxed me and said, I can't believe how much you've changed and how well you speak English. It's like, it's just about learning and wanting to do something. That's my story.
Lovely. And I think that, there's a couple of things there, isn't there, to pick up on, is that one, you met somebody in your life that really inspired you. And that particularly for, I mean, I'm guessing you were a sort of an adolescent stage at that
I
point.
was 12, kind
Yeah.
of, yeah, going to that
Yeah.
age, yeah.
So, and I think that's a really key time often, isn't it?
Yeah.
And not everybody has that gift of somebody that is so inspirational, but
Yeah.
certainly we all have the opportunity to set a goal and do what needs to be done to achieve it. So well done you for,
Thank you.
and I think it is hard unless anybody that's listening has had that experience of arriving in a foreign country and not making themselves understood in the language. I mean, I did live in a foreign country for a while, but I was in Thailand where there was a big expat community. So it wasn't quite so vital for me to make myself
Yeah.
understood.
Yeah.
People, and of course, so many of them spoke English, but I don't imagine that you encountered many English people that speak your native language. So,
No, and also, Rachel, and then pick up on that point. I also think that if learning a language, and learning a language is also about learning a culture as
Yeah.
well. So you have to integrate, find ways to integrate yourself. So I have a big Sri Lankan community here who speaks English, and but I've kind of spread my wings, so I made English friends, and I went out with them, and I got to know the culture, and so integration helped me a lot to pick up the language and use colloquial phrases, which I often get wrong, by the way.
It must be hugely funny for your English friends, I'm sure.
I know it is. It is. I mean, I do like a bit of, sense of humor anyway. I don't mind making fun of me. So yeah, integration is important, and I think this friend asked me, how did I do that? I think that was the answer I gave. You got to integrate yourself. You got to get out of that comfort zone, and be prepared to make mistakes, be laughed and learn from it.
Yeah, I think you're right, because I mean, going back to my school days when I learned French at school, and then I mentioned that I lived in Thailand, so I made it my business to learn some Thai. But you need to know what the people actually say,
Yes.
because they don't actually say the sorts of things that you're taught, certainly at school. Uh,
Yeah.
Formal English is very different
Yes.
from what people actually say, and that
Say.
involves, what we might say now for phrases and words will have been a little bit different from what was sort of buzzwords, as it were, 10 years ago, and
Yeah.
then different again in another 5 or 10 words, 10 years time. So it's knowing and using the language that people actually speak. But I'm fascinated too that for somebody who still wasn't fluent in English at that time, that you fell in love with Shakespeare of all people, because many English people with English as a first language still to this day would struggle with Shakespeare. So interesting that you like that. Was that because you were studying the script or seeing the plays?
I did I mean, I like literature as a whole, and I like any countries, any cultures literature. I think literature exposes of a lot of things, from culture to injustice to everything. So literature, it's a language in itself, literature. So I like literature anyway. I like my own language, literature. I'm still in love with that. But I think I was introduced to English literature very early on, when I was about 13 or 14, and I just kind of fell in love with the concept. In Shakespeare and Wordsworth, two different eras and two different concepts and two different styles. Obviously, Wordsworth, for obvious reasons, is about nature, as you can see, beauty, positivity, and Shakespeare for undeniable, undying exposure of society and the concepts and who we are as people. I'm not got an analytical brain. So I just love it. I mean, I had to have books that helped me translate Elizabethan period English. Obviously, nobody talks in like thou art and thou ought to oughta. We don't talk in those terms anymore. But I had to have books that helped me, that translated that. It's the concept itself, and yeah, I mean, it's just, yeah. And then obviously Victorian period, massive fan of Victorian period. In a way, like, I can't call myself a coconut, because I'm not English, but there's a big part of me that has, that just loves English literature, loves Victorian period, loves English history. I think there's a lot that we can learn from it. So I just kind of
Yeah.
like it, how things have evolved.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things I like to do, Nisanka, thank you for sharing all that, is to sort of just throw out a couple of ideas of if when you're speaking about your story, and I don't know whether you do or have a plan to, because there's obviously a lot there that you could do. But I mean, the kind of starting points that throw themselves up at me are one that you could start with that love of literature and love of Shakespeare, because and then go on and say, and you weren't even fluent in English, because it's like, people would turn their heads. But also,
Yeah.
there's always that thing of those first few months in England which must have been hard, when you couldn't make yourself understood.
Yeah.
You didn't understand the culture, because I think there's a lot there, isn't there? So that's my two penneth worth of good starting points, because it's really important when you're sharing your story, not necessarily to start back when you were born in Sri Lanka, but to start at a point of interest that will hook your audience in.
Good point. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. It's been really a pleasure to speak to you and hear more about you. So thank you for contacting me and getting in touch. How can people get in touch with you, Nisanka?
So I have a private Facebook group called Let's Talk Anxiety. You can just join in. It's free to join. Also, my email, nisanka@coachingwithnisanka.com. It's also the website. So yeah, nisanka@coachingwithnisanka.com. I think if you type my name on Google, I'm kind of on top.
Yes, it's not a common name, is it?
No, not at all. I come on top. So you Google my name, you'll find me.
Yeah. Okay, and perhaps you could put those the links
Yeah.
to those, in the comments.
Will do.
So much for joining me today. As I say, it's been an absolute pleasure to speak to you. Yeah, we will make sure we do connect, and hopefully at some point we will actually be in the same room at the same time. So